Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from StepByStepPainting.net, and this acrylic painting tutorial will show you how to paint this adorable red wagon with pumpkins and little sunflowers and pretty fall decor. I'm doing this on an 11 by 14 inch canvas, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is load my palette with titanium white and Mars black, so black and white. And I'll be using a 3/4 inch flat wash brush to paint the entire background first. So the background is a gray, really simple sort of black and white mixed together, making gray washed background, kind of a faux wood look going on here, a little rustic. So what I did first was I loaded my brush with titanium white, the little bit of Mars black on the corner. You only need a tiny bit of black for this because it's kind of a light to medium gray color. So what I'm doing is I'm using the full width of the brush to paint left and right strokes. So the wood grain of the background is going left and right because our canvas is positioned horizontal. And so I'm just letting the white gradually, gently blend with the black, just doing full width strokes left and right and filling the entire canvas. So I don't want to over blend this because I want the streaks of gray to be kind of different and varied and sort of abstract looking all throughout. I don't want it to be just a solid color gray. I want to go for this kind of a rustic faux wood look. So if you feel like your paint is not flowing that much, you can always add just a dab of water on your brush and not too much water because then the paint will start dripping and you'll get some water underneath the paint. So you don't want too much water, but just a little bit just to get the paint to flow can be helpful. And so I'm just going to continue this technique all throughout, filling the entire background with the black and the white. If you like the darker look, you can always add just a little bit more black. It'll make your gray darker. If you want it to look lighter, you can always add a little bit more white. You can also do this technique with different colors. If you want to add just a touch of brown in there to kind of give it a brownish look, you can do that. But I like the look of the gray for this because it looks really pretty with the red and the wagon. So I'm going to go ahead and go silent here for just a bit while I finish this technique, and then I will demonstrate and tell you what we're going to do after that. So you're going to want to let this background dry before doing this next step. I'm going to add some dry brush to the background. This is optional. You don't have to do this, but it does add a pretty sort of rustic look to the background. So this is dry, and I loaded my palette with some more titanium white, and I'm going to use that 3/4 flat brush to do this. So basically, I'm going to load just a small amount of the white on the tip of my brush, and I'm going to get a towel and gently wipe some of it off. And then I'm going to dry brush this onto the canvas. So I'm just going to do, take the full width of the brush and just kind of streak it along. And it shows up better over kind of the darker areas, but it'll show up over the lighter areas as well. So I'm just adding this kind of all throughout the canvas, especially on the ends of the canvas. So you have some areas that are kind of brighter, and that's the dry brush effect. So you can just add that all throughout your painting. And If you wanted to add more later on after you finish painting the wagon, you can always do that as well. Just a few strokes here and there kind of just adds a fun little touch to the background of this painting. Well, next, you're just going to have to decide which way you want to position your canvas, and you're going to need to let this dry because we're going to do the drawing of the wagon next. And if you don't want to draw this, I have a template you can download and use that to trace onto the canvas, but I'm going to show you how I drew this. So I'm going to start by drawing this with the white chalk pencil, but I'm going to switch to a regular drawing pencil because the chalk doesn't show up quite that well on the light colored background. But I am going to start by drawing a horizontal line across the bottom of the canvas because this is going to be an invisible line where our wagon is going to be on top. So the wheels are going to be on top of this line. So this helps to position the wheels so they're nice and even. You can estimate, I did 3 fingers from the bottom of the canvas, like 2 to 3 inches from the bottom of the canvas. That's going to be, so a horizontal line, and that's where your wheels are going to be situated on. So the first wheel, if I take my hand and kind of position it right here, it's about where that wheel is going to start. And I just lightly sketched out a circle. I measured this and it was about 2 inches in diameter, but you don't have to have that be exact. And then if I take my hand and put it in between the first wheel, that's about how far apart those 2 wheels are. And then I can use a T-square or a straight edge to just kind of line up the top to make sure that they're both even in the same height. And then my circles are very sketchy, so I draw multiple circles until I kind of get the circle that I want. And then on top of both of those circles, we have a horizontal line. So I'm going to switch to my pencil here to make this darker so you can see. So we have the 2 circles. And then we have the horizontal line. So I'm going to use my ruler to create the horizontal line on the very top of those circles. And then our wagon is about 2 inches high. So the red piece, or the red metal part of the wagon, is going to be about 2 inches high. And the corners are curved. So I'm just going to curve these upwards, and they're kind of lined up to the edge of the circles, so they only go out just a little bit further from the wheels, not too far. And the height is about 2 inches high. And then I can take this ruler and do a horizontal line at the top. So very basic shape. And then we have the top piece right here, and it's very thin rectangular piece with curved edges, and they go out just a little bit further from the main piece. And I'll just erase this part right here that kind of went further. So there's our basic wagon shape, and our wheels are touching that bottom piece, but when we paint them in, we'll have a little metal piece that's kind of above the wheels, about where they attach. And so then we're going to do the handle. So this piece goes out a little bit horizontal. It's touching the left wheel, and then it goes diagonal, and then it curves just a little bit, but then it goes diagonal the opposite direction, so that our handle hangs over above our wagon. And then the shape of this handle is a rectangle with a rectangle inside. So that piece can be very sketch-like, and it can be adjusted later when we paint it in. I am going to start painting the wagon in. So I have Mars Black on my palette. This was used from the background, but if you need to freshen your black, you can do that. And I'm using a number 4 round brush. I recommend that you slightly water the black down a bit so that it can flow better. And I'm going to paint my wheels first. So each of those circles are going to be painted a solid coat of black paint. I'm just taking my round brush and painting the wheel black. So take your time and paint it in solid. And then you're going to have to paint the other wheel as well. So I'm going to go silent here while I paint both of these circles black. Right here, there's a little piece where our wheels are attached to the red piece. So I'm just going to paint a little notch above each of the wheels, and it's okay if it overlaps the drawing a little bit. So just use the black to paint the little piece above the wheels. Next, we're going to start painting our wagon in. So this is the color Pyrrole Red. It is a very opaque red, so it's going to have some really good coverage. If you're using a different red or a red that doesn't have good coverage, you might need to paint your wagon white first, let it dry, and then go over it with the red. But we're going to just not do that with this one because it's very bright and opaque. This is a number 12 bright brush, so it's a little like a 1/4 inch flat brush. You can use a similar size flat brush. I'm going to load it with the red and use the full width of the brush to paint left and right strokes. So my strokes are going in a horizontal direction, and I am just basically going to fill this shape in. So this is the shape that I drew, and I'm filling it in solid with the red. I will be doing a little bit of blending and shading, but for now we're just going to paint it red. This right here is dragging a little bit of that black, that overlap there. So that kind of worked in my favor because I wanted this to have a little bit of a shadow down below. So that's what's happening there. It's just grabbing that little bit of black and kind of dragging it into the red. But for the most part, everything else is just going to be solid red. If you need to switch to your round brush to get those curved corners, you can do that. And especially the small piece at the top that has the very thin rectangular piece, the lip part of the top of the wagon, definitely you can use a round brush for that too. Use the tip of the brush to really cut in and get that shape drawn in. So I'm going to go silent here again while I go ahead and just fill my shape in red. I will be grabbing bits of titanium white here and kind of blending it with the white. This gives our red some color variation. So if I just grab a little bit of white and just kind of streak it in there, kind of gives our wagon a little bit of a shiny look. And I'll be doing some highlighting to this too once the red kind of dries a little bit, because that white blends in very quickly with that red. So I'm just taking it and just kind of dragging it, but not letting it mix all the way. Gives our red a little bit more of color variation. Then the area that's kind of towards the top, just under the lip of the wagon, has a little bit of a shadow. So adding just a teeny tiny bit of black into that red, just a very, very small amount, because that red will turn very dark if you add too much black. Just a teeny bit of black up there, and just kind of painting that area right there below the lip of that top part of the wagon. A little bit of a shadowy area up there. And I'm just kind of dragging that and kind of blending it in with the rest of the wagon. And then just using that tip of the brush, just a very slither of dark red right there at the top. And then I'm just blending it down a little bit. Try not to get it to be too dark. I don't want to lose the bright, pretty red color. And just gently blending that in. Then I'm going to grab a bit more of white and do two curved strokes on each side. This is just to kind of highlight the corner areas, and a few streaks of white throughout the wagon just to give it a little bit of a shiny look. Then I'm going to paint the top part of the wagon, so that thin piece at the very top, and I'm going to use that with the round brush. Do that with the round brush. Double load it with the red and the white, so it's a lighter red color. And I'm just going to take that and paint it in. So kind of red and white mixed together, and I'm going to just paint that piece in so it's curved both of the sides and filling that in solid. So you can see what happened when we did that shadowy area below that, and then this part is lighter. It's creating contrast. So just a light red all the way across. And then I'm just going to fill in this part right here, solid. Just make sure that's all filled in where my drawing is. Next, I'm going to paint the handle. So I'm just going to rinse all these brushes off and get my round brush back and the Mars black. And I'm just going to start painting this piece right here. So this piece is attached to our kind of the bottom part of the wagon, and I'm going to use the kind of make my stroke thick enough to fill in that shape that I drew, and then it goes diagonal up. I'm just following the drawing. Again, a little bit of water in that black really helps to get that paint to flow, so you can create that continuous line without it drying up on you. And then it curves a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then it curves this way, and then trying to make it the same thickness throughout, but like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. It gives it more character when it's not perfect. And then I'll paint the handle shape in. That handle shape is like a rectangular shape. Next, I'm going to add some very loose, subtle outlining on the bottom of the wagon. So just a very, very small amount of black paint on the tip of the brush and very loosely outlining the bottom part. Not the entire thing. I'm not outlining all of the wagon, just some parts. So I did this little corner down here, and then I'm going to do a little bit at the bottom, so very, very loosely. It's not a bold, continuous outline. It's just a very thin, and it's not everywhere. So just a little bit under the top piece, that shadowy area that we created, just a little bit of outlining up there as well. Touching up my wheel there a little bit. If your wheels are dry all the way, you can do the white part of it next. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rinse all that black off my brush and grab my titanium white. So I'm just painting a white circle inside of each of the black circles. So you want to try to make it as even as possible, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect. So leave a good even amount of the black on the outer part of that white circle. But if you mess up, you can always wait for that white to dry and you can go back over with black and make it more even if you need to. So I'm going to go silent again while I do this wheel and the wheel next to it. Next, I'm going to do a little bit of highlighting on the wheels. So with that bit of white that's on my brush, you can also wipe it off to do dry brush with this. Just a small amount of paint, just making a curved stroke on the left side of each of the wheels, a little bit on that piece that's above the wheels. And I'm going to do a little bit of highlighting on the handle piece, the handlebar piece. So just streaking that white, again, only small amount of paint on this brush. If it's too white, like right there, I just went back over it with the black just to give that handle piece a little bit of character. And you're going to do this right here on that rectangular piece and then on the inside part of it as well. Next, I will rinse and dry and load my brush with a little bit of red. So I'm going to do the little red circle that's in the center of that white circle. And I'm going to do this on both of the wheels. Next, I will be painting the pumpkins in. So this is still the number 4 round brush with the titanium white. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint my pumpkin shapes white first so that the pumpkins will be solid and opaque, because orange tends to be kind of a see-through color, and adding this white first is going to give us a nice foundation to prime our pumpkin painting with. So I'm just going to paint the shape of the pumpkin. I'm stroking it so it's kind of going in a curved direction. That's what we will be doing when we paint the pumpkins in. We'll be doing these curved strokes. So I'm just did my first pumpkin shape, and it's inside the wagon, so we don't see the bottom part of our pumpkin. We just see the top part. And then I can decide where my next pumpkin's going to be. So it looks really cute when it's like a variety of pumpkins. We have big and small. We can have some tall and skinny ones, and shorter and wider ones. So this one's going to be a large and wide pumpkin. Did the outer shape of it first, and then I'm filling it in solid using curved strokes. And try not to paint over the red part of your wagon, but if you do accidentally paint over the red, we can always go back over it and redo that red piece. In fact, it will be kind of challenging when we do the orange part of the pumpkin details, not to paint over part of the red. So we'll be painting, we can always redo that part, upper part of the wagon. And so here's my next pumpkin. This one's going to be shorter and smaller. And we can even have pumpkins that overlap each other. So this one, we can have it maybe behind or in front of that first one that I painted. I'm doing a total of 4 pumpkins. You can do more or less. You can just do 1 pumpkin in your wagon, so it's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and make this far left pumpkin overlap that smaller one too. And then I'm going to just go ahead and start painting the colored part of the pumpkins in. So I'm going to load my palette with a few different colors. This is Cadmium Orange Hue, Primary Yellow, and Burnt Umber. So there's a variety of oranges in these pumpkins, and I'm going to mix a few on my palette. So I'm going to start by doing orange and yellow, and a little bit of white, so it's going to make kind of a light orangish yellow color. And then I'm going to grab orange, and next to that, and I'm going to this is going to make kind of a darker version of that first color. Then I'm going to grab the yellow, and it's going to create a different version of that color. And grabbing a little bit of brown in there is going to make kind of a dark burnt orange color. So you can do that, or you can experiment and make 4 different colors using the white, orange, yellow, and brown. Just keep in mind just a teeny bit of brown, otherwise it's going to be too dark. So then I'm going to select one of those 4 colors that I mixed on my palette and paint my pumpkins in. So I like to start my pumpkins with the middle piece, so it's kind of an oval shape in the middle. I paint that in, and then I grab a different shade of orange and I paint the 2 bumps next to that in. So I stroke those in the direction, going in a curved direction. So you can see the middle piece is lighter because I used a lighter version of orange, and the outer parts are a little bit darker because I selected a different shade of that orange. And then there's 2 more curved pieces on the outer part of those pieces, and I grabbed a different orange for that. So just stroking my brush in a curved direction is going to create the look of the pumpkin. It's going to give it that pumpkin texture look. And then I'm just going to repeat that technique for each of my pumpkins, and you don't have to use the exact same color pattern. So if you wanted to start the middle with a darker color, you can. I think the middle looks good when it's a lighter color because it looks like it kind of pops a little bit, but you don't have to do it that way. But I'm just doing my second pumpkin here, and again making the colors different for each of the little bumps. So I'm going to grab this darker one over here because this one, we'll just have it go in front of the previous one, but having it be a different color is going to help that pumpkin contrast from the pumpkin that's next to it so that it stands out and it doesn't just mesh together with it because it's the same color. So there's my second pumpkin, and we'll be doing some more highlighting and maybe a little bit of shading on these pumpkins later, but for now we're just kind of just filling in the color. But I'm just going to go ahead and repeat that for this one. You may notice I'm not rinsing my brush off for changing the colors, and that's fine. But if you notice your colors are just not mixing and they're just all becoming the same color, definitely rinse it off or just get a towel and wipe it off so you can just kind of start your brush over again, because sometimes it gets overloaded with too much paint and it just doesn't do what you want it to do anymore. So there's my little pumpkin. And I'll just go ahead and do my larger pumpkin over here on the left. So stroking from the top to the bottom, curving that stroke gives it that pumpkin texture, making the bumps each kind of a different kind of orange. This one's going to overlap our little guy. You can go over some of your strokes with a second coat of paint. If you do go over it and touch it up, just be careful not to over blend your oranges to where all of a sudden they're all the same color of orange. But I'm just going to wipe the brush off and grab a teeny bit of white. And I'm going to take this white and gently drag it just from the top down. So a little bit of highlighting on the pumpkins, very subtle. These pumpkins are so tiny, there's really not, we don't want to just get too detailed with them. But taking that white, starting at the top of the pumpkin, curving it downwards and letting that white just kind of fade away before we reach the bottom of the pumpkin. Next, I will do the stems of the pumpkin. So this part is really fun. Get your brush rinsed off and load it with some of that brown, some of that burnt umber color with a little bit of black just to make it dark. So a little bit of black in your burnt umber color to make it a super dark brown. And you'll want to add a little bit of water to that as well, but not too much water. Get that paint right there on the tip of your brush so you can kind of twist your brush when you load it. But we're going to do our pumpkin stems. So you're going to start kind of a little bit below the top of the pumpkin, and I like to do a sort of like a pointed piece at the bottom, kind of like an upside down triangular piece. And then our pumpkin stem, I like the pumpkin stems to kind of go a little curved, gives it a whimsical look. So it can be wavy or it can curve down. If you want to do a different style of pumpkin stem, you're more than welcome to. And so I'm just going to do that on each of my pumpkins. And then I mentioned earlier that our pumpkins might overlap that top part of our wagon, and we can just go back and paint over it again. So I'm going to do that right now just with my round brush and the red, and I'm just going over that very, very top piece again. You can grab a pop of white in there if you want that highlight to still show. So I'm just over painting painting over any of the orange that might have overlapped our wagon. I'm going to paint a couple of very simple sunflowers in my wagon, and I'm going to do that with the round brush and the burnt umber. So I'm just going to select where my sunflowers are going to be. There's one over here, the lower left, and there's one kind of a little bit up high in the upper right. And I'm just using the brown and the black, same exact color as I did with the stems, but I'm painting two oval/circle shapes. And then while that dries, I'm just going to get my eraser and erase any chalk lines or pencil lines that are left. So I did that really quick with my eraser while my center circles for my sunflowers were drying. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my petals for my sunflower. So I'm mixing primary yellow with titanium white on my palette. That white will help make your petals a bit more opaque so they'll stand up and help to overlap anything. So just a very, very basic petal shape. I'm just stroking with my brush, starting from that circle and just stroking outwards and creating each individual petal. They're small, so they don't need a lot of details. So kind of a basic petal shape, and grabbing a little bit more white, especially in areas where I know that petal needs to be bright enough to stand out, maybe against some of the pumpkin or some of the wagon color. So that bit of white will help make your yellow pop a little bit more. So I'm just kind of dragging my brush from that center outwards. So there's my first simple sunflower. And I'm going to just repeat the same thing with the sunflower in the upper right. Next, I'm going to do pumpkin leaves and vines and my sunflower leaves. So I have the color Hooker's Green Hue Permanent. You can use any green for this, but I like to grab this green. I'm going to make it into a lighter sort of yellowish green. So on my palette, I'm mixing some white into it, and I grabbed a little bit of primary yellow and mixed that into it. So it's lighter and a little bit more of a yellowish color. So for my pumpkin leaf, I'm just going to do a middle line first, and then I'm going to take this and do the outer sort of prongs of the leaf. So I'm just doing one little stroke, two pieces on each side, and one piece in the middle that kind of, in each of the little prongs that are sticking out, are kind of curved. So I'm going to do that again for this one. So middle line, and then stroke diagonal outwards, two pieces on each side, and then one piece in the middle. And then you can vary your greens a little bit and have some that are darker. I grabbed a teeny bit of the pure Hooker's Green on my brush just to do some darker lines in the middle, but the leaves are so tiny and the brush is not as tiny, so I just gave it a little bit of a darker shadow in the middle part. And then I'm going to do some vines, so same color, twisting the brush to get that paint right there on the tip, a little bit of water, especially because this is going to be such a thin line. You might want to use your liner brush for this if the foreground is too thick, but I'm just doing a curly line out of that pumpkin, and then we'll do a curly piece out of this one. And a little bit of white in there to kind of vary that color a bit. And then maybe this one is going to get a leaf. And then I'll use the same green for the leaves of the sunflower. So I'm just going to do a simple leaf shape. This one's going to kind of going down from this sunflower. It might be overlapping the wagon a little bit. And then this leaf, I'm going to just decide that it's going to go this way. You can have more leaves if you want, leaves that go in different directions. So that's up to you. There's a few more detailed fall pieces that I'm going to put in the wagon. So I'm going to rinse and make a light brown. So I'm going to grab the brown and mix it with a little bit of white, maybe a little bit of yellow. I'm just going to do a few pieces of hay kind of sticking out in some of the areas of the wagon. So this part is going to kind of stick out on the back. I'm just taking the brush and just stroking it to create the thin lines. And let's see, this one may be coming out this way. Maybe there's pieces of hay sticking out this way. So you can kind of decide. It's already a little bit cramped in there, but you can have some pieces sticking up above the pumpkins. And then I wanted to do little pieces, little branch pieces that have berries on them. So I'm just taking that dark color, the brown, the burnt umber color, and I'm just going to make a few small little twigs sticking up above the pumpkins. And then rinse and dry, and then I'm going to use the red color to do little dots on the branches to create little berries, or maybe they're little flowers. So I'm just dotting the red on those branches. Then I'm just going to grab a little bit of white and add some white in there for highlight or color variation, just to add a pop of contrast in that area. I also want to add a little bit of highlight to the stems of the pumpkin. So I'm going to rinse, dry, grab just the white this time, and just on the left part of each of the pumpkin stems, I'm just doing a very, very thin white line. Then I'm going to add white highlight to the corners of the wagon, so the bottom left and bottom right corner are both going to get a curved highlight and a little pop of white at the top. Then I'll be doing shadow. So for the shadow, I watered down the Mars Black to a watercolor consistency. It should be very thin, somewhat light, translucent, and I'm still using the number 4 round brush. So I'm taking the watered down black and adding a shadowy area just under the wheel. So this will just kind of give our wagon some dimension, make it look like it's kind of situated somewhere, and just a little bit, and that's it. That's it for the shadow. And then I decided to take the black and just do a few little outlining of the pumpkin bumps just on the bottom and kind of curving my stroke up a little bit. That kind of gets the pumpkins to pop a little bit, and then I slightly outline this bottom area down here. Next, I will be writing the word, or the 2 words, hello fall. So I'm doing this with a chalk pencil. You can also write with a regular pencil, but I recommend writing your word or words out first before painting them in, so you get the placement right and you can get the lettering right. But I wrote hello fall in cursive, and I used titanium white paint and a you can start with the number 4 round brush and see if that works for you, but it didn't work too well for me, so I switched to a smaller brush after this. So I'm outlining my letters. It's also way easier to do this with a paint pen, but my white paint pen had run out, so I am using the paint. But if you have a white paint pen, you can definitely use that. So this is a 10-0 liner brush, so it's a brush that has very, very small amount of bristles, so you can get in there and do detail work in your paintings. So So I'm just going to use this brush to go ahead and outline the rest of my letters very carefully with the white. And if you mess up on your letters, you can always get a baby wipe and wipe it off real quick. Or the beauty of acrylic paints is we can always paint over it. But I recommend having a baby wipe handy, especially if your red is already dry. The red of the wagon is already dry. You can easily just wipe off any of the mess up of the lettering really quick with a wet wipe or a damp paper towel. So I'm just gonna, I'll go silent here for a little bit while I finish these letters. A few little white highlights on the top of the pumpkin, but nothing too major, just to give it some pop. But that is it, my friends. This is the conclusion of how to paint this super adorable red wagon with fall decor in it. You can certainly add more things to this painting. You can add a pumpkin on the ground, falling leaves. You can definitely be super creative with this, but I'm going to leave it like this, nice and simple. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.